Alright, so now we're going to see how the knee-jerk reflex occurs. Now, the knee-jerk reflex is caused by a stretch in the muscle, and it's not just these muscles that respond to stretch, but all of our muscles can actually respond to this reflex. So what's happening here? Uh, the reflex hammer is being hit on the patellar ligament. This force actually causes the muscle to stretch a little bit. Okay, so then the muscle is saying, okay, why is it stretching? The information is sent to the spinal cord. And so here you're seeing the arrows. The arrow is going to the dorsal side of the spinal cord. Remember, the dorsal side is for the sensory information. So then the spinal cord says, okay, why is the muscle stretching? Do we need to contract it? So then the spinal cord sends a message through the motor neuron, and the motor neuron then causes the muscle to contract. Now, the purpose of this is think about if you're carrying something heavy and your muscles stretch out. Well, you need to contract your muscles to make your muscles stronger because if it stretches too much, then it will lead to the injury of the muscle. And so here, hitting the reflex hammer onto the patellar ligament, even though it doesn't seem like much, this causes stretching in the muscle. And then the spinal cord causes it to contract. Okay, so know that a stretch reflex is called a monosynaptic stretch reflex. And so what we're seeing here again, what I've been saying, striking the patellar ligament causes stretching in the muscle, sensory neuron then sends the information to the spinal cord, and the spinal cord then. Okay, withdrawal reflex. Know that this is when something painful occurs. So when you touch something hot or when you step on broken glass, you immediately move that limb away. And so that's called a withdrawal reflex. So again, it's automatic. You don't have to think about it. It just occurs. Uses of the reflexes is to see if the nervous system is functioning correctly. So this would be done to see if the sensory neuron is working, the motor neuron, and if there's a damage in the spinal cord. And so what we're seeing at the bottom is the examples of reflexes that can be tested. The knee-jerk reflex, the plantar reflex is for the foot muscle, biceps jerk is for the biceps brachii. And so we can see that really you can do this with any of the muscles and they will all respond to stretching. Okay, the spinal cord has parts where the information is going up, and then there are the parts where the information is going down. So really just know the ascending tracts are carrying the sensory signals up towards the brain. So ascending meaning the information is going up, versus the descending tracts. So descending tracts know that this carries the motor information, and now the information goes from the brain and down the spinal cord, hence descending. And don't worry about this picture. Okay, so the peripheral nervous system we learned consists of the two types of nerves, cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. And we also did see that the peripheral nervous system can also be divided into the somatic. What somatic refers to is the skin, skeletal muscles, but the autonomic refers to your internal organs, like your heart, intestines, stomach, all that, all those. Okay, so what really is a nerve? Nerves are just really a bunch of axons together. So what we're seeing is on this picture, so this is an entire nerve, but inside are these very, very thin lines and also has myelin. So nerves are very similar to how muscles are organized. If you remember, muscles have those rods, the fascicles. So here they also call these fascicles, and so you can see this fascicle that they took out. And then the fascicles are made up of the axons. Okay? And also the coverings are pretty similar to the muscles. Epineurium, this is the covering on the entire nerve. So here, and we're seeing this covering there. Perineurium covers each fascicle, which we saw here. And the endoneurium covers each axon, or the axon of each neuron. Okay, so again, sensory nerves, we learned that sensory nerves bring the information to the brain or spinal cord, and the motor information sends the information away from the brain and spinal cord to your muscles and the glands. We're going to see that some nerves are mixed nerves. These are mostly the spinal nerves. Some cranial nerves are also mixed nerves. What this means is the nerves carry both the sensory and motor neurons inside. And so they're just taking the same route, and even though the information is going opposite ways, they're actually located on the same nerve. Okay, then these parts, this slide and the next slide, I don't ask questions about these, but what is kind of referring to is somatic refers to skeletal muscles, visceral refers to your internal organs. And so general meaning just normal organs. And then the next slide, if it says special, this refers to the special senses. But again, don't worry about these. Okay, so on your lab exam, there are the questions on the cranial nerves. So you have to study that picture, be able to identify those cranial nerves. So now we're going to talk about the functions of some of those. Okay, so we have 12 pairs of cranial nerves. And each of these cranial nerves are given a number. And that's what it's saying in here at the bottom. They're given Roman numerals. Okay, so here's the picture, similar to the picture that I gave you. The olfactory nerve is the most front one, so they give it number 1. The next is the optic nerve, so that's number 2. Oculomotor is coming from the top of the pons. Trochlear is the very, very thin one. Trigeminal, the thickest. So then we're looking on top of the medulla oblongata. Abducens the top, then it's the facial, then we're going to see the vestibulocochlear. Vestibulocochlear goes to the ear. Right below vestibulocochlear, you have the glossopharyngeal that they labeled here. So that's 9. Vagus nerve is 10. Accessory nerve, you can see here, accessory nerve has these little branches. And then hypoglossal is by itself. Hypoglossal is the most medial, and it's coming off of the olive part region of the medulla. Okay, so now the functions for some of these nerves. Olfactory nerve we have to know. Olfactory nerve, know that it picks up the sense of smell. Optic nerve is for vision. Trigeminal nerve, with this one, know that this picks up sensory information from the skin of the face, but it's also controlling our chewing muscles. And it's called trigeminal because it's got these 3 divisions. Okay, but so know the main action for this nerve. Then the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve, the only cranial nerve to go all the way down to the thorax, from the brain all the way down to the thorax, to the abdomen. And know that the vagus nerve, this one is coming out of the medulla oblongata, and it goes to control the activities of the heart. You can see here the lungs, the digestive system, the urinary system, and also part of the reproductive system. Okay, so cranial nerves are part of the peripheral nervous system, and so are the spinal nerves. And so we're seeing here the nerves coming out of the spinal cord. You're going to see that these numbers are a little familiar. If you remember, we have 7 cervical vertebrae, but here we have 8 cervical nerves. That's because there's one extra coming from on top of one of the top vertebrae. Then there are the 12 thoracic nerves, 5 lumbar, and then 5 sacral, 1 coccygeal. Okay, so for the spinal cord, if you remember the dorsal root is the part that comes here, and then it turns into this bulge part. But the ventral root is then the other side. So this little branch there. Okay, so know that the dorsal side carries the sensory information. And the dorsal root ganglion is that bulge part. It's larger because this has a lot of the cell bodies of the neurons. Dermatome. Dermatome just refers to what region of the skin is getting information to the spinal nerves. And so if you, let's say, this part of the neck, this part of the neck is getting sending information to the 3rd cervical spinal nerve. And so what this means is that the spinal nerves pick up touch information from the skin. And it could be touch or pressure or pain. Okay, so then the ventral roots, this is for motor. It carries the movement information. And so what is happening is the dorsal side is for the sensory, the ventral side is for the motor. Now you can see how the two are linking together. So here, after the dorsal and ventral come together, it's the spinal nerve. And so what it means is the spinal nerve is carrying both motor and sensory information. And so it's just a picture showing the spinal nerves. The cervical plexus just means the nerves in the neck region, the cervical region. You don't have to memorize these numbers, but one thing that I want you to know, coming out of the cervical region is the phrenic nerves, and know that the phrenic nerves activate the diaphragm. Brachial plexus, these are the nerves that go to our arm. Musculocutaneous nerve, know what muscles it controls, biceps brachii, brachialis. Know for the ulnar and medial, this is for the forearms, hands. Radial nerve goes to the posterior side of the muscles of the arms, so both the arm and the forearm. And the axillary nerve stays in the shoulder, deltoid into the teres minor. Lumbosacral plexus, now we're looking at the nerves going to the lower limb. For here, obturator nerve, know that the obturator nerve controls the muscles on the inside of our thigh, to the adductors. And the femoral nerve goes to the anterior thigh muscles. Okay, so those ones are in the front. The sciatic nerve is the nerve in the back. So posterior thighs. And then what happens, the sciatic nerve on the back of the knee, it separates into two. If it goes all the way down the back of your leg, so the calf region, that's the tibial nerve. And if it goes to the fibula side, that's the common fibular nerve. The old name for the fibular nerve is the peroneal nerve. Spinal nerve injuries. So of course, spinal nerve is very, very delicate and easy to injure. And so here are some of the injuries that it's talking about: whiplash, broken or dislocated vertebra. If the phrenic nerve is damaged, that is life-threatening because then the breathing stops. Okay, sciatica is the compression of the sciatic nerve, and the carpal tunnel syndrome is the compression of the median nerve because of the overuse of forearm muscles.